everyone. Thank you for joining Jesse and I today. My name is Valerie. I am from Girl Scouts Carolina, Peaks to Piedmont. I am a Troop Experience Manager, and I'm coming to you today on Thoughtful Thursdays with Jesse from the Kellin Foundation. Hi, Jesse. How are you today?
Hey, Valerie, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be with you all today. And I know there's been a lot of feelings of anxiety and just feeling unsure about how to go into the school year. So hopefully I can provide you with some tools and some information to help you prepare for the upcoming school year.
We need it so desperately. I'm so glad that you're here to talk to us about this today.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and pull my information up for you and we will get started. All right. So today we're really going to just talk about how, COVID-19 has changed the way of the world this year. I know we hear about it every day. It's hard to get away from talking about this, but it's especially important right now as we're preparing for this upcoming school year and getting our kiddos ready to go back to school and figuring out for ourselves as caregivers and parents how to balance what we need to do as well as supporting our child or children. So first, I'll just share a little bit about the Kellin Foundation. So again, my name is Jessie, and I'm one of the therapists at the Kellin Foundation, and I specifically work with youth and their families to cope with anxieties, depressions, and especially trauma. But at the Kellin Foundation, we offer a variety of services from, individual therapy, family therapy, peer support, community outreach, and we really love to empower our youth, and that's why we're partnered here today with the Girl Scouts. All of our services are free or little cost, so please check out our website or our Facebook if you feel like you need some extra support there. All right, so like I said, our objectives today are to learn a bit about anxiety symptoms, how COVID has impacted anxiety for youth and families, and then how to support your youth and yourself, because that's important too, as the school year begins. All right, before we start talking about this thing called anxiety, I just want to normalize it. Anxiety is a very normal thing to feel, right? It's something that keeps us safe, especially when we sense danger. So let's just think about ourselves, and let's say we're in the woods having fun, we're camping, right? Because we're Girl Scouts, and a bear comes. What if you didn't have anxiety? You just thought that was like a totally cool thing, like you're just chilling, and a bear comes. That's dangerous, right? So that's where, exactly. So that's where we need anxiety to kick in, our fight, flight, or freeze. We're either going to fight the bear, we're going to run away from the bear, or we might freeze and stay still and hope that it walks past us, right? So anxiety is something so crucial and so important to keeping us safe, but when it becomes something that interferes with your ability to hang out with friends, to go to work, to go to school, to feel good every day, that's when we might call it a disorder, like an anxiety disorder or something of that nature. But everybody has some level of anxiety. So I just wanted to start there with that foundation as we move forward. So some symptoms of anxiety that maybe you or your children have experienced this year, it really breaks down to 3 different sections. So we have our psychological symptoms. So that might be having a lot of fear or worries about what's going on in the world or about you, having racing thoughts. And I kind of think about it like when you blow a bubble wand and there's so many bubbles. It's kind of how I think about our thoughts sometimes. They just come in. Sometimes they pop really quickly. Sometimes we have one that just kind of lingers and you're like, all right, let's pop already. Sometimes it's hard to concentrate, or our memory feels like it's not as sharp as it once was. Sometimes we might be indecisive, or we might be even irritable. Especially, I know for a lot of caregivers, it's hard for us to find that patience when we're stuck inside with our children. They're feeling irritable, we're feeling irritable, and it just feeds each other. We might feel more nervous than usual, or we might even notice some changes to our sleep or our appetite. Some of the physical symptoms you might have are, you might notice that your heart is beating quicker than normal. You might get some chest pain or difficulty breathing, maybe some nausea or stomach pains. You might even have a headache or some dizziness as well. And of course, these are concerning, and you want to make sure that it's not a medical issue, but oftentimes we do find these physical symptoms of anxiety. And then, of course, there are behavioral symptoms as well. Like you might avoid talking with friends or your family. You might become a little obsessive over something. You might feel distressed if you're out in public, especially today, when we're told we have to distance. And so it's a little bit different when we're in social settings. It's unusual to know how to behave these days in public settings. And for some, we might even use substances to cope. All right, so how has COVID impacted our anxiety, as a society? Like I said earlier, this is an unpredictable time for us as a society, and things are rapidly changing. It's all moving very, very quickly, and it's hard to feel grounded when, everything's moving 1,000 miles per minute. We've been asked to adapt as a society to new work situations, schooling platforms, and new ways of connecting with loved ones. We've become masters of technology this year, which is, of course, a strength, but it's also been a challenge. And it's just unusual for us because we long for human connection as individuals and as a community. Anxiety can certainly be heightened when we don't know what's going on. When something is out of our control or there isn't like a tangible outcome of something, that heightens our anxiety because we have to brainstorm what's going to happen. We have to be ready for anything. And so during this time, we feel really uncertain of when things will be normal again, or when there will be a cure for COVID, right? Anxiety can also be heightened when we don't have our usual coping skills, the ways that we relax ourselves. So maybe for you, it was going out with your friends for lunch once a week, to get away from the kids or get away from your partner. You might not have that right now. Or peer support groups, if that's something that you go to, or even our summer vacations or summer outings, have shifted as well. So some of those things that maybe take some of the pressure out aren't really there anymore. We've had to find different ways of coping. And for some of us, it's harder to find new ways of coping. And then, of course, we're surrounded by global anxiety on social media, the news, public places. And it's really hard to escape all of that. So it heightens our own individual anxiety. So, and then we come to the conversation about the school year. This whole summer, we've been waiting to see what's going to happen, right? It's like we've been on the edge of our seats, just anticipating what school will look like. And of course, this varies across the nation. It varies from district to district, and even depending on what kind of school, it might look different as well. And I think even some schools haven't made a decision yet. So if you're feeling in that place where you're still waiting for an answer, just know that it's normal to feel that anxiety, especially as the school year creeps in. So this impacts both caregivers and youth. Of course, there's the uncertainty if school will be virtual, in person, or a blend. If your child or yourself will be exposed to COVID, especially for those of you that are teachers as well, that adds a whole nother dynamic, not only, as a parent or a child, but being the person in the room that's supposed to keep kids safe and supposed to, manage PPE and social distancing while teaching your children as well. Some kids and parents have been fearing, that their child feels behind academically. Kids had to really adjust and adapt very quickly last school year to learning online. And some folks are even having to wait to get technology in place or, working through systems crashing. So it's normal to feel that anxiety about not feeling caught up quite yet, even at the beginning of the school year. There's anxieties around having technology issues this year or childcare, especially for caregivers that, are working and having to keep their kids at home to do schooling at home. Knowing whether or not your child will know how to use masks and social distancing while they're at school. Of course, they're going to see their friends for the first time in so long. How are they going to resist hugs and, shaking hands and all of that? So we have some anxiety there as well. For those of you that are learning online this year, there's, of course, the Zoom fatigue, that fatigue that kids get when they're in front of a screen all day. It's hard for kids to sit still, and it's especially hard for kids to engage when it's online. It's not being in person with hands-on activities. Not only is there anxiety these days, but there's also grief for a lot of youth. A lot of youth, will be going into their senior year, or doing their last school year, in middle school or or elementary school, and they have a lot of grief that it's not going to look the same. Last semester, we saw that some youth weren't, having their proms, they weren't having graduations how they expected them to be, and it's normal to grieve these events that they had maybe longed for a long time. All right, so we've kind of covered a bit about what's, going on in our society, how anxiety might be shifting these days. Now let's talk about some solutions and some ways that you can support your children. So first and foremost, caregivers, parents, fill your cup first. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And I know we hear this time and time again, right? But it's so hard to do. We know it, but it's like we forget to put ourselves on the to-do list. And we need to shift the way that we think if we want it to be sustainable and we want to have endurance for this school year. So Valerie, tell me some ways that you fill your cup. Let's inspire some of these parents.
So I know for me, I love to read. And so I make it a point to take time to read. And that really calms me down and makes me think about things. And then the other thing that I like to do is actually spend time with my daughter doing something frivolous. So we like to bake. We bake together, and doing that really helps us calm down together and rejuvenate. And then I know for me, every day we also have snuggle time. We have 10 minutes where I'm not mom, I'm her friend, and she can say whatever comes to her mind, so that helps her. And it also helps me by knowing that she has that relief. So by her being calm, I feel calm. So between the reading and the baking and the snuggle time, for the most part, I feel refreshed at some point throughout the process of the day.
Right. I love that, Valerie. So not only are you sharing with the viewers how you fill your cup, but how you fill your family cup, right? Because there's, a few different kinds of cups, if we want to put it that way. If we're looking into the cupboard, we have our own cup, we have the family cup, and then we have our child's cup. And so you just shared ways to really fill all of them, right? Because if our child isn't well, we're not going to feel well. But at the same time, if we don't feel well, our children, they pick up on that. So it's really important that we nourish all cups. All right, so some of the ways that I fill my cup is by gardening. So similar to your baking, Valerie, it's a very sensory heavy activity. With baking and with gardening, you're using your hands, you're using your senses, and you really feel engaged in that activity. So I encourage all of you watching to find something that really fills your cup, and maybe stimulates all of your senses, your touch, feel, taste, especially if you're baking, your sight. All of that is really good for us. All right, so this is one of my favorite tools. It's called the self-care wheel, and you can find this online. You just do a quick Google search and type in self-care wheel, you will find this. You can find this in many different languages. It comes in Spanish, French, all sorts of languages. And they even make a blank one so you can fill it in yourself. But what I like about this is it really breaks it down into different categories. Sometimes we think of self-care as, just splurging or indulging in things like bubble baths or, eating dessert. And that's part of it, but we also want to challenge ourselves and really look inward when we do self-care. So what I like to do is I like to look through this wheel and highlight what I'm already doing so I can see how I'm already taking care of myself. And then I might put a check mark or a star next to things that I want to try. So feel free to use this at home, especially as you're preparing for the school year. And start anticipating what barriers will be. As the school year starts, what are some things that are going to get in the way of you taking care of yourself? Get ahead of those barriers and really plan for it so you can be successful for yourself and for your family. So now the next cup would be to help youth cope, right? our kids. We worry about them. We want them to succeed this school year and to feel some sort of normalcy in this unsettling world. So we want to create an environment that welcomes open discussion about concerns that your child is having. And the ways that you do this with your child is by validating our youth's emotion and experiences. Even if it feels silly or we don't quite get it, we don't want them to know that. We want them to feel heard and like their feelings are valid. I think a lot about the parents that I work with and their teens, and, teens will have a relationship that lasts a few days and they're just so heartbroken, right? And parents are like, what? It was only 2 days. But they're only just learning how to relate, right? And how to have relationships. So for them, it is devastating. So if you can put on your teenage shoes, whether those are Converse, Vans, whatever they were, and just pretend to be them and really feel their feelings, they're valid. Listen more and talk less. This is hard. We want to lecture. We want to tell them what's right. We want to fix it, right? We want to get in there and fix it and make them feel better. But what really helps is just listening more, talking less. Be the holder of hope, even if it's hard. There's not a lot of hope in social media. There's not a lot of hope in the news. So we have to be the holder of hope for our youth. So that way they feel like there's a reason to keep pushing forward. Keep the dialogue going. It's not just a one-time conversation. We have conversations as we're getting ready for the school year. You might check in after the first day, first week, first few weeks, halfway through the school year as things change. It's ongoing, and we need to constantly check in with our youth and with ourselves. Like you did for yourself by checking in on what self-care looks like for you, you're going to help your youth do that as well. So think about what their coping skills are. And this can look, as therapeutic as breathing exercises and grounding, or it can be simple like distraction coping skills like watching TV, playing sports, doing some art activities, playing board games with the family. Just really notice what helps your youth when they're having difficult feelings and encourage them to do that when they're struggling. Sometimes when we're in those difficult feelings, it's kind of like a deep hole that we're not quite sure how to get out of. So if we can have someone pull down that rope or throw down that rope and say, hey, do this, it might help them get out a little quicker. Kids crave consistency. So please try to maintain routine, structure, creating a sort of calm workspace for your youth if they're doing online schooling is really important. A lot of their consistency was taken from them earlier this year. So it's important that our households be as consistent and structured as possible to help them feel grounded. When we don't know what's going on, we don't quite feel grounded, and that's just not good for anybody. And of course, if you've, tried all of these things and you notice that whether yourself or your child is really struggling with your anxiety or any difficult feelings, seek professional help. There's tons of telehealth resources right now to help you cope with what you're suffering through. So Valerie, I'd love to know, out of these topics on this slide right here, what have you found helpful for you and your child?
So I touched on it, and it started when she was younger. So it was called Snuggle Time, where we had 10 to 15 minutes, no ifs, ands, or buts, every single day, whether it was first thing in the morning or last thing at night, where we just got together. And I told her, I said, I'm your friend right now, and you can say anything you want to mommy. And so being able to listen to her talk to me the way she wants to talk to me and not have any fear, that was big. And for me to validate that everything's okay and you're allowed to feel that way and you're allowed to feel upset. And we use the term in our house that you're the boss of your own thoughts. And so if you're feeling upset, you can boss that around and tell yourself you don't have to be upset, but you have to work through it first. And so I think for me, it really is validating her emotions and listening to her and giving her the opportunity to say that. And even though it's not necessarily snuggling anymore, but we still have those talks. And I think that that's really important because that's also that consistency in her life that she knows she's got me undivided for a certain period of time every day.
Absolutely. That is so beautiful that you've started that, from early childhood. And that's something that you've continued to be consistent with, especially as, she becomes older through adolescence and teenage years. She's going to know that she has you in that snuggle time, right? To really share those inner thoughts and feelings that maybe she can't share with others. So something that you said that's really important we're about to touch on is to validate all emotions. So a lot of times as parents and caregivers, we say, don't cry, or it's okay, or, don't be angry right now, or don't feel sad right now. And that's us trying to get in there and fix it, right? We have great intentions when we say these things to children, but what they hear sometimes is it's not okay to feel sad. It's not okay to cry, and it's not okay to feel angry. When in reality it is. We need those emotions to teach us things. They teach us how to problem solve. They teach us how to cope. So we welcome the emotion and challenge the behavior that follows the emotion. So it's okay to be angry, but it's not okay to hit your sister. Punch a pillow instead. So we want to validate the feeling, but maybe offer a alternative behavior that maybe is more helpful to the child. Again, we don't have negative or bad emotions. They're just simply difficult. They help us survive, thrive, and avoid danger. And they help us connect.
And that's kind of where you're the boss of your thoughts came from. It's okay if you feel bad about it or you're upset, but remember, you're in control of that. You're the boss of them. So when you get to have that, but then you need to be done with it. And so that's kind of how that came about, was you just boss them around. You tell your head that you don't want to be mad anymore. And you can be done being mad when you're done. So that's something it's just worked really well in our household. And, now that she's 12, it definitely, it helps out that we have those type of conversations.
Absolutely. And not only is it validating for your child, I'm sure, but it's also empowering her to feel in control of what she's feeling and what she's thinking. A lot of youth, they're being bullied today, and again, with COVID and everything, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot that's out of our control. And for you to empower your child and say, you are in control of these two things, your thoughts, your feelings, or three things, and your actions, that's so empowering for our youth. So I love that. I hope listeners out there will take that and incorporate it into their household as well. So if you're kiddos and you are kind of struggling, well, how do we really work through these emotions? There are tons of charts out there. There are simpler ones for young children. I love this one because it's emojis. And of course, we know that our youth love to text and Snapchat and all those things. So this really speaks to them. So you can print something like this out, and you can even laminate it if you want to, and they can circle how they're feeling that day. Or if you see them very upset, you can have them circle it in that moment if they don't have words for it. So this is just one of my favorite tools. And of course, there are, adult versions as well. There's the feelings wheel. If you do a quick Google search, you'll find that to help you name your emotions, because the more we can be in tune with ours, the more we can model that for our child. So it's, of course, totally acceptable for you as a caregiver to feel frustrated or unsure of what's going on. And you can say that to your child, like, I'm really frustrated right now. And when I'm frustrated, I bake to feel better. And that's teaching them how to cope with their emotions as well, and that all are okay to have. So some resources that we have for you online on our website, we have tons of different apps for young children, for teens, for adults, to help with some of those healthy coping skills like breathing, grounding exercises. So please feel free to check that out and make use of these apps that are listed on here for you. Sesame Street's also a great one if you have young children at home. They're talking a lot about how to deal with big feelings and what's going on in the world. So please do make sure to use those resources if you have a young child. If you find yourself in need for different kinds of hotlines, food, housing, financial assistance, mental health, we also have these local resources. This is for Greensboro, but there might be some for the remaining Triad area. So please use that as well if you're finding yourself in need of any of these resources. And lastly, we have a part of our agency is called Resilient Guilford, and we have monthly events. But this next one on Wednesday of next week will be about supporting children that are going back to school. So you'll get an hour length's worth of conversation and tips. So please feel free to check in on our Facebook page and register for that event. We'll have some school personnel and some behavioral health providers there to really give us some insight on how to best support our children as we're going back into the school year. And again, we have a Facebook event for that, so please feel free to check that out. just want to thank you all for listening. And I'd love to know if there are any questions in the chat, or if Valerie, you have any questions or comments at this time.
So I don't, there's no current questions in the chat log, but I want to remind everyone that if you have any further questions for Jesse or anyone else at the Kellin Foundation, to please reach out. We do have the link in our comments. And if you're interested in any other programs that Girl Scouts offer, please go to beagirlscout.org. And just thank you so much, Jesse, for your time today and all your insight. And hopefully this will help more of our families cope as we are getting ready to go back to school within the next month. And if anyone is interested in joining us, we will be back again next Thursday with another Thoughtful Thursday. So thank you, Jesse.
Thank you so much, Valerie.